Naughty Dog, once revered as the pinnacle of the gaming industry due to the quality of its games, graphics, gameplay, and ideas, with no microtransactions, no cash-grabbing announcements, nor DLCs, was pushing the concepts of what a video game is or should be to the limit, especially by its focus on turning gaming experiences equal to that of movies, with excellent stories, characters, interactions, and environments. When Naughty Dog announced the game, you could be sure that it would be a masterpiece, impossible to dislike. That is, until 2020, when The Last of Us Part 2 was set to come out. When the blood got leaked and the game was out, people started to change their opinions on the company drastically. And with the recent trailer of their new game getting more than 70% dislike to like ratio, it is worth trying to uncover why did that happen. But here I'll try not to do anything objective. I'll just give my opinion on what I remember and what I see. And if you have anything to add to this video, please make a comment and help us to expand this discussion. So number one is fake trailers. Even though this is a very common practice, especially on big blockbusters like the MCU movies, where you have so many characters and you want to hide someone not to spoil the experience or even add them, so you want people to get even more excited for this, when the trailers of The Last of Us Part 2 came out, since the first one in 2016, Joel, who was present at the trailer, was also expected to be in the game. But that aside, it was okay for him not to be the main character this time, since his character development was already finished, so to speak, in the 2013 game. Therefore, once we had already another gameplay experience with Ellie herself in the same game, people were not only okay, but also hyped for having her as the main character for the sequel. But the problem is this. Besides Joe being to become the secondary character in the story, the following published trailers were pushing him to be, nevertheless, in the game as one of these main characters. So many theories were come to be like, well, imagine if Joe was dead, or just imagine playing 70% of the game with Ellie and then at the end or during an important part of the game you got to play with Joe again. That would be fucking awesome. Just like we had a gameplay parts with Ellie in the prequel. But then, when the game came out and this first theory was set to become true, because Joe didn't even pass the first hour of the game, and then 50% of the gameplay, you got to play with this totally new character who, surprise, surprise, was not only one of the responsibles for killing Joe, or the responsible for killing him, but also never even showed in almost any of the trailers, merchandise, or advertisements of this game. Like, what the fuck? And then, when it came to play the game, scenes in which Joe character was present, surprise, it was actually a totally different character, like Jesse, for example. So yeah, there are many problems here, like characters not being showed, characters being showed and actually not being really there. So fucked up, man. And this leads us to my second complaint, which is every important male character is either killed or incapacitated in this game. Like, Joe, dead. Jerry, fucking, I don't care about Jerry, but he's dead nevertheless. Jesse, dead. Owen, dead. Manny, dead. Isaac, dead. Tommy, forever crippled. The only male character I remember that isn't dead is probably Seth, but they still force him to become a racist, homophobic, that with faggot sandwiches, old man. Like, why? Why not make him an homophobic black woman? Why did it have to be white, Neil? Can black women become homophobic and racist as well? Fuck that. And then you have characters like Abby, who you pursue and have the total reason to kill on screen, but then you decide not to do it? Why? Well, I think the following scenes can explain that.
And the story was becoming very epic and ambitious, and I had a few parts that I was kind of stuck on, and I felt like to kind of shake things up, I wanted to bring in another writer.
I thought it was a very thoughtful story about violence and obsession. He had Abby, sort of like this girl who was the daughter of the doctor. And that Ellie would go on this vengeance quest. And when he was like, and then Ellie actually kills Abby, I was like, what? You're gonna, yeah, let's fucking do it. I thought she was a perfect vehicle to challenge this notion that violence doesn't have a cost, because it does have a cost in reality. It's going to ruin this girl.
This was the co-writer of the game in which New hired to help him, or at least to help him destroy the story. And this is just the third reason why Naughty Dog just sucks, which is this post-modernist deconstructed characters that either don't serve a purpose to the main story or are just forced to have one. Let's start with Abby, yes? Now, see, the problem here is all of this. Many people say that muscles is the problem in her design, but I disagree. Because let's take a picture of Liam B. Patty, for example, who's even stronger than Abby apparently, and comparing with her, you can see the difference is this is a male body in a woman's head. It is not how a muscular woman would look like. Even if she didn't have boobs or a butt, the shoulders, the arm, the pectoral area. I'm not an expert on the human body, but this isn't a female shape, even if you train. And why is she like this? Well, I have no idea. There's also this bunch of diverse characters that, well, Jess is Asian, and he makes a joke about that, which I give it a credit. It is actually very funny. But also there's Gina, who's Jew, a gay, which is actually both prohibited and a sin by most practices of Judaism. More on that on Wikipedia, just like having premarital sex, which she apparently have with not only Jesse, but with other people as well. Personally, I don't have anything against that. It is just humorous that Neil, while being a Jewish himself, would disregard his own community and religion like this. But anyway, the reason for why that is, well, apparently is because Ellie needed to have a baby, perhaps, without getting pregnant herself. Without having to be subjected to a man as well. Well, okay, but at the end, it just feels forced. The relationship between Dana and Ellie had for me the same deftness of a CW TV show like Riverdale. And you want to know why? Well, I'm pretty sure the next scenes didn't clear that out.
Not only is she contributing in a lot of ways, I feel like she's challenging what the story can be. She's wanted to add more romantic intimacy between the characters. Those are areas that I've been, I don't know, more uncomfortable writing that stuff. After the first day, she was telling me that she went home and told her husband that I think I just got Ellie's girlfriend pregnant. Because that was her big idea the first day.
So does that mean that there can be no female protagonists in video games? Because that feels super sexist to me. And frankly, like, women are the victims of violence, and don't we want to see women fucking fight back once in a while?
One article even like asked the question, were any women involved in the making of this? And it's like, yeah, the co-writer, the lead character designer, the lead character artist, all the actresses that worked on that scene.
That's so fucking... Here's what I hate about that article. I'm sorry. Do a modicum of fucking research, just a modicum of research, just like a little bit before you put something out there to suggest that no woman could have worked on this because of the level of violence, because there was violence against women, because it is a video game, is so fucking sexist. I like watching graphic violence. Does that make me less female? Like, I like having a conversation about what power is. Does that make me less fucking female. I like working at a video game. I like playing video games. Does that make me less fucking female? Like, suck a dick. Don't put that in. I can't. I can't. Neil's gonna say put it in, but don't. I also don't represent all women, but I represent, like, I can represent this and say, I fucking wrote this. I wrote this. Like, I literally wrote the sentence, and then Yara eviscerates eviscerates his esophagus from his throat. I wrote that sentence. That is in the script, and I fucking stand by it. I'm afraid of being turned into a token rather than the truth, which is like, we're being thoughtful about the female narrative. These characters are more than just their vaginas. If you want to have a serious debate about feminism and feminism in video games and female depiction of violence, and you need to not see it as a binary conversation. It is an incredibly nuanced conversation. You cannot make blanket statements, and you cannot make presumptions. Fucking do your homework. I'm right here. I'm tweeting.
And no, this was not a parody of The Office, nor an Australian TV show. Do you remember when Neil Druckman fired Amy Hennig from Naughty Dog, the woman that wrote most of the games or the company until then, just to have her replaced by this young blonde graduate woman that finished college, and the only interesting thing in her curriculum was probably that she was a feminist? Yeah? Well, anyway, let's move on. There are still some characters that seem to serve a purpose. For example, Mel, who's a pregnant woman during a war. Her character is still very dumb. Imagine having 6 months pregnancy and wanted to shoot zombies, terrorists, and climb 2-meter walls because, well, the script told you to do so. Talk about maternal instincts, right? And even with all of this bullshit, she still serves 2 purposes to the story, which are, first, to create drama between Abby and Owen, saying, boo-hoo, Abby was so thirsty for revenge that she lost the man of her life. Just like Ellie, oh my god, lost a woman of hers. And second is to create empathy between Ellie killing a pregnant woman while dating a pregnant woman herself. But you see the problem here? All of this just feels so forced. Would any of that really happen in a situation like that? Or would Mel just stay put on where she was instead of going to a war front with guns and so on? Many people on YouTube like Naked Jakey already covered this part better than me, but overall, most of the characters of the game are diverse for no good reason. We can add Lev to this list as well, because I think the script just blows his character for me. Because by the time the developers get Abby to ask Lev about his motivations and his background, she just says, I don't care. Which for me just sounds like lazy scripted. Yara, his sister, then gives an explanation that it was because he was set to become one of the spouses of the ancients of the village or something like that. Which, yeah, okay, that's a really good explanation. A character that doesn't want to be bound to being the wife of a pervert old man due to traditions and instead want to decide her own fate in her own life. That's a good story, but why? Why did you have to make Lev trans? It was not necessary, and it doesn't even make sense in a post-apocalyptic world. If she has female hormones, her body will develop like that of any other woman, shaving her head or not. She is still a woman. This is trying to put real-world problems into a context in which it really doesn't make any sense. You could just make some Mulan story with this, like making Lev a woman that was trying to gain independence from a group ideology. But at the end of the day, this is the main reason for why the game is like that, isn't it? You could really make a strong woman arc with Lev that decides her own future. I would personally really like to see that, but instead, Neil Druckmann says, no way, this has to be about or around politics. Fuck that, Neil, come on. At the end, all of this just feels really forced, like they were creating a story to fit the characters instead of making characters that fit the story or in congruency with each other. But this was probably why Neil hired the second writer. In my vision, she was the one responsible for making all of this bullshit in this game. Neil really had this story in which he had to kill Joe, which it is already stupid, but then he comes this second woman and writes her main concept and covers all of that with even more shit and even more mud. Which is, for me, the fourth reason why Naughty Dog, not just The Last of Us Part 2, really sucks. Which is bad story that serves none other than the developers or the developers himself, like Neil Druckmann or this new writer he hired.
Her heart races faster and faster as she sees this trail of blood. She opens the door, revealing Joel's mutilated body. And then shock just sets in and she screams and tries to grab his body, and Dina comes and rips her away, and on that cacophony of sounds, silence. Oh, we're just getting started.
You can talk all you want about diversity and how cool a thing it is, but when you have a fan base and make a game that doesn't serve them, it's not what they want, it is not what they asked for, and it is a game that even disrespects what they were expecting, like for killing the main character. How inclusive can you be when you exclude to please most of the people who would praise and enjoy your game? For me, this is just narcissism. Spending millions of dollars, millions of bucks, writing something and creating something that feels like a fan fiction, because you would enjoy seeing that. But what about other people? What about the developers? What would they like to see? I really like this very one clip in which Neil is saying how he kills Joe, and all of the developers in the room are like, man, this is not a good idea. You can really feel that in their faces. And like, have you ever considered what other people would want in your game, or is it just your own game? As you, Neil Druckmann, asked yourself once, who am I doing this for? For comparison, we can just state this. Ghost of Tsushima, which was launched around a month later after The Last of Us Part 2, with a budget of $60 million compared to $220 million of The Last of Us Part 2, is known to have sold 9.73 million copies in comparison to 10 million copies of The Last of Us. And I remember myself in that year when I wanted to play Ghost of Tsushima, but it was still on a full price even during the holidays, while The Last of Us was getting a 50% deal. We can even say like the differences for prices for the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Edition today and The Last of Us Remastered or The Last of Us Part 2 the base edition. So you do the math and try to figure it out for yourself which game was probably more of a success. And this leads us to the fifth reason why Naughty Dog sucks, which is bad management. And why bad management, you ask? Well, apparently, during and after the development of The Last of Us Part 2, 70% of the employees left the company. Why? Some may say that it was because of crunch, which, okay, makes sense. Some others say it is because The Last of Us Part 2 didn't get into the expectations or the financial expectations that the studio was setting to have. But at the same time, it is not easy to realize that things change. And Naughty Dog that made Crash Bandicoot isn't the same that made Uncharted 2 or even The Last of Us. And definitely wasn't the same that would like to be there for the next projects or for the company.
I feel like at any given point you'll go into the kitchen and you'll find people, what I would say, saloning about the game, like going deep philosophy into what's working, what isn't. People criticizing this or that. This doesn't look good. I don't like this scene. This doesn't work for me. I hate this.
You know, like they're going to lunch and like expressing doubt to each other and like, is this going to come together? Is this the one that like screws Naughty Dog up? Let me just exude whatever confidence I have left. Let me try to bestow this person with it so they can feel inspired and go off and do their work. But then sometimes you're alone in the office and you're like, what if this doesn't come together? What if this is the one that sucks? What if this is the one that sinks Naughty Dog? So then you have to like kind of bury it, compartmentalize it. Who knows what damage it does to your body while you're doing that. I'm working on the game towards the end at home by myself, feeling very alone. And I said, who am I doing this for? Like, why? It's too much. And I barely squeaked by.
Neil Druckman didn't make the first The Last of Us by himself. This is obvious. But when it came to the second game, he apparently got too much creative power, and people who helped him during the development of the first game weren't there to tell him what would be a good or not thing to implement in the game. Something similar to this is Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. Even though Konami certainly was a pain in the ass for the development of his games, especially for Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which was launched incomplete by its original and ambitious desires, Konami still gave Kojima the pressure he needed to make nevertheless good games and publishing and finishing them. It's very well known, especially in the game industry, that limitations aren't necessarily problems to be resolved, but rather opportunities to make even better games. For example, Silent Hill, which had a huge world that couldn't be rendered properly on the PlayStation 1 hardware. So what the developers did? First, they make this isometric camera which changes all the time, and also they make the fog, so the map could be properly rendered within the boundaries of the player and of the hardware's capacity. All of this really added to the experience of the game. Everyone wins. With The Last of Us, Neil had to make a story that not only he himself enjoyed, but because he was not the leader of the company and neither the game, he had to be castrated, so to speak, to other people's expectations. Something that not only didn't happen in the second game, but also, as we are seeing here, seems to be more of the main problem. If I would have to just summarize the biggest reason for why Naughty Dog sucks today, it is definitely Neil Druckman. Now, with this, we can go to our sixth reason, which is the unnecessary remake and remaster. But for me, personally, I don't think this is all that bad. I think the remake was an okay decision, and the remaster being sold for $10 an upgrade for those who already had the game in the first place was also comprehensible. However, the general public didn't think the same, with the like and dislike ratio being very negative to both announcements of the remake and of the remaster. But why did Naughty Dog decided to do that? And what I believe is that wasn't really their decision. While Jim Ryan took over the position of PlayStation CEO between the years of 2019 and 2024, he did, let's say, a lot of damage. Though PlayStation was already doing or financing some remakes and remasters of games like Shadow of the Colossus, Final Fantasy VII, and Silent Hill 2, most of these, so to speak, unnecessary remakes and remasters of games like Horizon Zero Dawn, Until Dawn, and The Last of Us that we are having nowadays were made during his time as CEO. Other decisions of Mr. Jim Ryan were, for example, to put every PlayStation exclusive game on PC, like God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, and so on, probably with the desire of getting more revenue instead of expanding the name of the brand itself. But personally, I think the best decision he made was to make half of the PlayStation studios during his time to work on multiplayer live service games. Probably with the intention again of cash grabbing the players using their names, the names of the IPs. A very common practice in the US gaming industry for companies like the EA and Blizzard doing the same. Some of the games that were being produced during these times were, for example, The Last of Us 2 Fractions, an all-online multiplayer of The Last of Us Part 2 experience, which was probably taking a bunch of Naughty Dog's time and employees to be made. They were also set to do a Marvel Spider-Man 2 multiplayer and Horizon Zero Dawn multiplayer spin-off. And of course, who can forget, Concord was one of the products derived from this Jim Ryan era. Like, even though the project was already set to start, there were definitely some drastical decisions to changing the characters and so on during his time. But who knows? Maybe the new Japanese guy and this other dude, bald guy, have something better to offer to PlayStation. Who knows? Just only time will tell. Some other decisions that this guy, Jim Ryan, made was, for example, to buy Bungie for $4 billion. A company which doesn't have a single IP rather than Destiny, and was bought probably with two intentions in mind. First, to just make a spectacle and proper response to Microsoft buying so many different studios, which is in itself a story for another video, and two, to still invest in live service games. Like, just fuck Jim Ryan. This guy was the most American CEO you can imagine. He really nailed the coffin on himself. But anyway, I also don't think the remakes and remasters decisions were only due to these external factors outside Naughty Dog's self-management. I also believe that when 70% of your employees left your studio, you kind of get inexperienced people to work with, just like Assassin's Creed Shadows, that seems to be being made by people who never actually developed a video game before, and this is probably due to the layoffs that Ubisoft have made. Now, Naughty Dog had to train their new employees to know how to better develop games, and working on previous projects as well. And doing a remake and a remaster, for me, seemed like a good way to do just that. Technically speaking, the next Naughty Dog game has probably everything set to be very good. That is, unless it comes to a PC, right? Now, story-wise, I also have my doubts, but the culture of polishing the mechanics and the graphics is always amazing. We can just hope that they will keep doing that even with the new people around. And this is the topic for the last reason for why Naughty Dog sucks for me, which is this new intergalactic trailer that really shows what the company is set to become under Neil Druckman's management. A studio which only cares to appeal to a public that doesn't really play video games at all, trying to care more about questions on the ideologies of today's world instead of making, again, a piece of media and work of art that is remembered throughout time, just like the old games from the company. Just like The Last of Us game, a story about a man who became a cynic due to his past and rediscovers his humanity again when set to become a father and even a male figure to his new daughter. Just like Uncharted, a story about a man that is adventurous, seeking treasures of the past with his friends and girlfriend, and even though he doesn't always get what he wants, he still does the right thing at the end. Or just like Crash Bandicoot, and this is in a way just a ripoff of Mario. A guy who goes after a girl and keeps coming after her no matter what. You know, all of this is really simple and really makes the stories to be repeated forever. It is like what the analytical psychologist Carl Jung will call an archetype. These are the things that exist within ourselves. And when we communicate with them, we have a good story and that feels pleasure to be consuming. If Neil Druckman keeps trying to subvert the stories for his own narcissism of thinking what is good for other people instead of actually giving us or giving them what we want, I don't think Naughty Dog will survive for long. As one of the best gaming studios out there at least. If people wanted to be lectured, they will play Age of Empires, Civilization 6, or just watch, well, videos on the internet. People don't want your ideologies, and if you keep forcing them to receive something that they don't want, well, you just become that which you criticize on others. That is, Neil Druckman becomes this patriarch which controls Naughty Dog with an iron fist and doesn't roll back even when he's wrong. This sort of path that he's taking is not a good one. I just expect that he can see that and really give people what they want. I mean, the public at least. And at the end, all that we want is just good games. I really hope that Naughty Dog comes to this Joe or Uncharted or even Crash Bandicoot archetype. Just look at its past and try to remember what made it truly great. So that is. My name is Jeff and I see you in another video. Goodbye.